Welcome to Rapid Fire Theater's 2021 Bonfire Festival, broadcasting live to you from Treaty 6 territory. The Bonfire Festival is a special time of year where we bring our newest and most innovative ideas to audiences for the very first time. This past year has required a lot of innovation from our artists as we have reimagined improv for virtual performance. We're excited to share these new ideas with you, so thank you for being here and supporting Rapid Fire Theater during this time. Speaking of support, we want to give a huge thanks to our funders, the Edmonton Arts Council, Alberta Foundation for the Arts, and our sponsor, Oodle Noodle. So thanks again for being here and enjoy tonight's Bonfire. How do you turn this off?
Bonfire!
Hello, everyone on the channel of YouTube. Welcome to Improvised Suspense. The improvisers here for you today will be creating stories of suspense. They plan to terrify you, spook you to your core. Really hit deep in those things that make you fearful at night when you're walking down an alley or driving alone or cooking some toast after midnight. So be ready. There are some things you can do to prepare yourself for this. All of the stories will be completely auditory. That means there will be no visual movement of the improvisers. You will not be seeing them. There will be a solid image that you can see during it. So if you choose to, you can just stare at that image. But I would advise and recommend that you really let yourself enjoy and feel this by closing your eyes during it. So you can really imagine you are going through this story, as is the intention. Furthermore, if you have headphones, that would help. As it is auditory, it can help to just have some headphones so you're not going through your laptop speakers or your phone speakers, however you're watching this. If not, that is okay, but maybe take this moment to go grab some if you have any nearby. Otherwise, the improvisers today that will be presenting the stories with you are Matt, Paul, Sharon, and Susan, trained in the theater of spookiness. As a heads up, as I'm sure those of you from Edmonton are aware, there is a bit of a blizzard going on right now. So if the feed does disconnect, that is most likely what it was from. It is hopefully not from a ghost, but I can't make any guarantees on that one. For this format and our very first story, I need from you, if you could type into the chat, an object, please. I can see some of them have started to come on in, so if you could send in some objects, please. Fantastic. For our very first story, we're going to be doing a story about a Rubik's Cube. Please sit back, close your eyes, and enjoy this improvised suspense about a Rubik's Cube.
You have always been drawn to puzzles for as long as you can remember. You like to make pieces fit. You like to bring things into alignment. You like to solve. You feel like you've completed when you do, completed something important.
You always loved solving things, so much so that you were a high school boy. You always went to the club room at lunchtime, and there was a group of people there that you were quite familiar with because they also, much like you, enjoyed puzzling. Various puzzles of many different kinds, some of them regular puzzles, clicking in pieces, some of them mental puzzles, riddles, some of them Rubik's Cubes, and you loved them so very much.
Your favorite memories were sitting in the room quietly amongst your friends, the sounds of tick-tacking, little movements, and the adjustment of chess pieces, puzzles, and Rubik's Cubes filled the air. You and your friends would share these as some of your fondest memories and also some of your strangest moments.
there was always one of the people in your puzzling group that you never knew quite as well as the others. He'd entered every once in a while, making light talks, but he truly was just there for the puzzles. One day, you remember, some day in autumn, you can't quite recall, the boy came up to you when you had not spoken to him. He approached you, asking you, as you were quite a talented puzzler, if you were interested in a more complicated challenge. He had recently retrieved a puzzle from his father. He had passed away, and then he handed it to you, handing you this box with a strange foresty image on it.
You went into that forest to solve this puzzle, taking it apart, seeing that it cubed together into certain pieces. But it was really the mystery of the forest that helped you put it together. You turned to say to your friend, "Thank you for that," and you realized you were alone with this cube.
You looked around you, and though it had been light out earlier, with the length of the trees, the shapes of the leaves, only small pieces of light could filter through and reach you. It seemed almost as if you had been swallowed whole in the darkness of the forest and had somehow found yourself deeper and deeper in it without knowing how you got there.
Yet you continued to puzzle as day became night, and you begin to frighten over the various noises you heard in the woods. You were frightened at simple things, twigs snapping, the rustle of the leaves, little birds chirping, but you continued on. You were mesmerized by the puzzle, staring into it, the forest and the puzzle. The image inside seemed to change and shift as you continued to look at it longer and longer. What began as a calming puzzle soon began to frighten you as you looked further and further in, seeing the little details as you pieced it together, things that were not on the box originally.
What frightened you the most is this puzzle was essentially revealing truths about yourself. You turned the cube and you heard a click, and something snapped into place. And as you looked deeper into the cube, you heard the hooting of an owl. You looked above you and you saw the wide eyes of an owl staring at you, rotating its head clockwise in one full circle. You looked down again at the puzzle and went and walked on.
You felt the wind blowing. It was cold. You didn't know which way was home. You didn't know how you'd wandered so far into the forest. You were engrossed in this puzzle. It was hard to separate the puzzle from the forest. You tried to throw the cube away, but you couldn't. Something stopped you. An immense fear and a wind swirled as you held this thing in your hand and realized that it also held you.
You decided that it was time to head home. The puzzle wasn't finished, but you were too frightened to continue. You laid it down, leaving it there completely with the box, the cube, everything. You stood up and you headed home. At first you thought you were lost inside the forest. It took you minutes. The trails began to disappear. They grew thin, and suddenly you made it out. You were frightened, but you had made it home. You had told your mother about the frightening experience, and she told you she didn't trust that boy that you had talked to, that she doesn't recall knowing his parents too well, and that he was a strange fellow. But it wasn't too much of an experience. To you, you had been frightened by a puzzle. You had went into a forest and ran home. But it was the next day where things began to get really strange.
As always, you went to the club room and heard the reassuring sounds of chess and checkers and Connect Four. And someone was missing. That boy who so often wandered in and would just preoccupy himself with puzzles was not present. You inquired around the club, and everyone gave you a stare as if they didn't know who you were talking about. Nobody else could remember this boy.
You wondered how it could be only you that knew anything of him or any memories of your times together. That day, as you walked towards your locker, it was quiet. You could only hear the sounds of your feet slowly moving across the floor. And then, just like that, the faintest sound over near the washrooms just by your old locker.
You walk around the corner, closer and closer to the sound. And when you get there, it's as if there's not so much a presence, but an absence. You can tell where you are. You know exactly where you are in the school. You've been here hundreds of times, but there's a piece missing, a piece you have to solve.
You fumble a little bit more urgently than usual towards your locker, turning the dial combination, click, 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 24, click, 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 backwards, 36, click, 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 19, and you tug, except your locker doesn't open. You do it again, click, back, click. You shift and you start fumbling with the lock, but you're getting nowhere.
You pull harder and harder and harder. You lost in the moment, frustrated by your locker, frustrated by the fear you felt yesterday, frustrated by the fact that nobody seems to understand what you're going through. In anger, you begin to smack your locker, hitting it as hard as you can. Some kids begin to look at you strangely. You realize that you're making a scene and calm yourself. You enter the locker combination one more time, more slowly, and it opens with ease. And as you open, puzzle pieces begin to fall out the floor.
They fall upon you in a jumble. Some are jagged, some are smooth, and some of them aren't even made of cardboard. What kind of a puzzle is this, you think to yourself?
And yet, as you slowly begin to pull the puzzles off of your body, you notice something that really shakes you to your core. As each puzzle piece is taken off, one from your wrist, one from your arm, behind it, the skin is gone as well. You take more puzzle pieces off, and more of you seems to be disappearing, shrinking, leaving, no idea where it's going, with people staring at you and looking through you as if you're not even there.
You scream at the top of your lungs, frightened that you might be disappearing. You begin slapping your arms, trying to feel anything, feel the warmth of a touch, feel the cloth on your clothes, and you feel everything, yet when you look down, you don't see anything. In the hotel, one of your friends grabbed you on the shoulder. He turns you around, he holds you, and he says, "Tom, are you doing all right?" You're shaken.
You brush him off and you run. You run out of the school and you run back towards the woods, back towards the puzzle you didn't solve. You try and hold all of the pieces on you as much as you can, but for every one that falls, a piece of you goes too. You become less present as you enter the woods. Night is setting. You can hear the sounds of the forest, the nocturnal forest coming alive. You can feel the chill in the air. And you can feel a slow and steady wind blowing you towards where you know you have to go.
The incomplete puzzle lays in an open area of the forest. You kneel down and grab the pieces, and as you put them in, you begin to notice parts of you beginning to reform. Slowly, you begin to calm, looking into the image, you becoming captured again, as though you were never left the first time. You feel as though you've been in this forest forever. You look at the image, and in the center of it, now, you see yourself kneeling down in the forest. You see yourself inside the puzzle, as though it was a prediction, a magic trick. And in the background, in the forest, you see a pair of glowing eyes.
You look towards the eyes, you take a deep breath as if almost at ease, though you know you should be terrified, and the one thought crosses your mind: I am home.
This has been your first story of Suspense of the Rubik's Cube. For our second story, as you can see, these stories are meant to lead you down a journey, you specifically down a path of fear. So I would like for you all to think about something that scares you personally. And please put that into the chat. This could be as simple as spiders, snakes, or as specific as perhaps your grandma driving you to church from a story you had when you were younger. Very good, thank you. We will be taking heights for our second story of suspense. So please sit back, close your eyes, and prepare to be scared.
You had planned a trip with your friends. You were planning on going rock climbing, despite the fact that you had been frightened previously. But you were there regardless. You packed in a van with many of your friends in the passenger seat. You were in control of the music, playing lots of fun summer tunes.
Just like some Lizzo. For a while, you pull out some classic Big Shiny tunes too. Really, everyone is on your wavelength, and these are your friends. And only at the back of your head are you thinking about the fright you'd had. You were trying to make this as fun as possible to set yourself up for success.
You had remained calm despite the fact that you were about to face one of your biggest fears. You drove up, you were going to Banff where you were planning on doing this event. And it was beyond just the rock climbing. You and your friends were planning on relaxing, hanging out, doing a little partying. You had arrived after hours, seeming like minutes.
You get out of the van and you realize that your cabin's just a little bit far ahead. However, the tire blew out and it looks like the last bit of the trek is going to have to be taken on foot. So you pull out those brand new spanking hiking shoes and you start lacing up. You tug them just in place and suture up your backpack. The climb ahead, though, is a little bit uphill. And you think to yourself, what if we just push the truck instead? Would that be the best idea? And you start to get a little bit of that panic in the back of your throat as you realize your friends are already a bit far ahead of you.
You begin to rush behind them, trying to catch up as quickly as possible. You grab your friend Michael on the shoulder and he turns around. He says, hey, you looking a little frazzled. We're not up high yet. You know, if you need to stick with us, I can watch you. Your friend Michael had always kept you calm, and it was reassuring to hear, but you needed to talk about the fact that you couldn't just leave the truck in the middle of the woods. You needed to go somewhere and get it repaired.
So you walk along the highway, farther and farther, getting closer and closer, looking for any sign of a mechanic, a gas station, and eventually you find one. It's small. There's nobody around. No cars have passed you for at least half an hour, but there is a light on in the window.
You knew you were truly in the undiscovered areas. The paths were no longer highway. They were dirt. They were path of dirt road, gravel. And the small shack, which could barely be called a mechanic shop, began to frighten you. It was early day, though, so you felt calm. You approached by yourself.
As you look around, you start to feel this feeling of dread creeping up on you. Your heart begins to race just a little bit quicker than you're used to, and you can feel just a little bit warmer than you have been. Not wanting to show any of this to anyone else, you continue to act nonchalant, like everything is okay. You smile, you look around, but everything you've done so far feels false and feels like a face that you've put on in front of your friends.
As you head back to the truck with a wrench in hand and your friends carrying back an extra tire, you realize that your feet are really hurting you. And you wonder why you didn't think about breaking in these new hiking shoes. You realize they're too tight, and it feels almost like your feet are suffocating. They're getting sweatier and sweatier, and you know that you're getting blisters, but you've got a lot more walking to do before you get back to the truck.
It's that point in the trip where you feel like maybe you should just call it early. You've only spent a few hours to drive out. Everything's refundable, and you know you're not having a good time. Your feet already hurt and you haven't begun to walk. You keep this to yourself as you don't want to ruin the good time for everybody else. But you begin to wonder if this was such a good idea in the first place.
Your brain begins its spiraling that you've been so used to. The what ifs start flooding through. What if I told them my feet hurt? What if I just go wait in the car? What if I make an excuse and pretend to take a phone call? What could happen if I do choose to go? Is it time to just leave now? Could we go back to the car? Is there something else we could do instead? And how will people feel of me later if they know that I canceled after this much time spent preparing and coming all the way here?
It seems like in the blink of an eye, it's almost pitch black. How could that be? Oh wait, there's no streetlights out here. It's not like we're back in the city. Wait, you call out to your friends, isn't this where the car was? But the car isn't there. Everything looks the same in the woods. It could have been this place, it could have been 5 miles back, could have been 5 miles forward, so you keep plunging on. And the more you walk, the more the incline keeps getting steeper and you're getting higher and higher up a rocky terrain.
You feel foolish for panicking. Your friends all seem to be completely calm. As you see an area where you're positive the vehicle is, they continue that if the vehicle was supposed to be there, it would be here. It must be further down the road. Eventually, after miles of trek, you come across the vehicle, which feels certainly farther than where you had left it. Whether it was something in your brain making it feel longer or whether or not, it did not matter, because it was dark now and you were tired and you were just glad to see it. One of your friends, Jim, put on the tire quickly and you all piled in, slowly heading towards the cabin, which was surely close ahead.
On the road, as your single headlights were the only light, as you carefully teetered forward and upward, every road, every direction seemed to lead upward on a steeper and steeper incline. But you eventually did arrive. It's just like it looked like on the website. You exhale a sigh of relief. You start to unpack the car. And then you look at Michael. And Michael's smiling. And Jim's smiling. They're all smiling. And they're all just staring at you. Waiting for something. As if you were supposed to say something. You're supposed to calm them when they know this was about you. This trip was supposed to be about you and what was happening and what did happen and how we were going to overcome what was happening now.
You don't know what to say and they keep staring, but all you want to do is just peel off those sweaty shoes. You do, and everybody looks down at your feet and they're bleeding. Oh, gosh, blistered. You guys have been walking for 6 hours. You're wearing the wrong shoes and you don't know what to do now. Has anyone got a first aid kit you want to say? But for some reason, it's almost like you can't speak because your throat is so dry.
But those thoughts were just a simple moment. Your friends, it picked up the objects, they grabbed coolers of beer, they grabbed various things, their packages, their bedding, and began to pile into the cabin. It was one of your friends' cabins. I believe Michael's, but it could have been Jim's. I'm not sure, because I wasn't the one who planned this trip. Well, they planned it around me.
Pretty quickly, as we settled into the cabin, I could feel myself breathe, or you could feel yourself breathing easily again. The cabin almost began to creak and move along with the laughter and the sounds of the relaxing atmosphere. And you and your friends almost forgot about that things were going on and things were going to change tomorrow. You relaxed, breathed, watched the crackling fire, stood outside with your friends, joked around that it was going to be such an exciting trip for all of you, and you slowly could feel your eyelids droop again, want to close, stay closed for a little bit longer, and soon you found yourself asleep.
Yet you woke in the middle of the night. After a restless sleep, you were in your small cabin room. Everyone around you asleep, and you began to hear strange noises outside. Odd creaking of the building, odd sounds, but nothing was quite as odd as when you began to hear a banging at the door.
You look around and nobody else is even moving. Nobody else is waking up. You shake Michael's shoulder. He doesn't move. He's warm, he's alive, he's breathing, but he does not move. You try Jim. You try everyone. And meanwhile, the banging is just getting louder and louder and louder, and you are just by yourself. You approach the door. Your throat is in your mouth. You turn the handle and you open it. There's no one there, but a few feet back is a deer staring at you. You are out in the wilderness. These things are known to happen, but it's staring at you, not afraid, but with recognition, with understanding.
And then another feeling comes upon you. A feeling that you've encountered a few times, one you don't know quite how to describe. Something some people call a sixth sense. Whether it's natural selection and your body's ability to recognize threats, or whether or not it's just a feeling of superstition. You feel as though something is behind you. The hairs on your neck stand up. You know that you should look behind you, but you're too frightened to turn around. Slowly, you close the door.
When you turn around, it's Jim. He's woken up, and he's staring at you. Oh, wait, is he awake? You realize Jim's sleepwalking. You start running through your head. Oh, should I wake up a sleepwalker? Is that dangerous? Can I freak him out? And Jim just stares at you with those wide eyes, unblinking. Jim? He doesn't answer.
And then he just simply keeps walking towards the deer, who starts to lead them away. You feel rooted to the spot.
Suddenly, you can feel the reminder that your feet are worn, tired, aching, bleeding. You feel as you're sinking slowly into the water, up to your ankles, up to your knees, to your waist, to your shoulders, to your neck. And yet you know you need to move. Every single part of you takes every single moment it can to tell you move, step, follow them. And yet the concrete that you feel throughout you will not allow you to move like stone.
You begin to shake and tremble on the spot. Your friends seem to be in some sort of trance. Slowly, you calm, but by the time you're able to move again, they're already gone. You know that you need to find them. Barefooted, without thinking about grabbing your hiking shoes, you begin to step out into the forest, following the pathway that you saw them down. In the distance, you can hear the creaking of wood, the snapping of twigs. Assuming that this is where they are, you begin to head out into the forest. Slowly, you walk, trekking as carefully as possible, until you come across a cliff edge.
They're all lined up along the cliff edge, standing as if waiting for you. The deer is beside them, waiting for you. Clearly, it's staring. Its eyes are following your every move. You can hear the whisper of the woods. You can hear their gentle, slumbering breathing. And all you can think about is what happened 3 years ago.
And then, in that moment of calm, as you begin to think about what happened, suddenly you feel a lurch at your back as you're shoved, careening over the cliff. You wake up in an instant. Daytime inside the cabin. Your friends cooking eggs, bacon. They've prepared breakfast for you, yet you're sweating, sheets covered, absolutely soaked. And you get up feeling nauseous, sick to your stomach. You stand. One of your friends approaches you, trying to comfort you. You try to explain your dream to them, but they seem unconcerned. A nightmare is simply a nightmare, after all.
They don't understand. You run out before you can stop yourself. You run to the precipice that you saw in your dream, the cliff, the dangerous edge, and your friends aren't there this time. They're back in the cabin, just thinking you were tripping out over something. Oh, you'll deal with the stuff. But the deer is there. The deer has been waiting for you. And it's like a force that takes you over as you walk over and climb on the deer's back.
You caress it calmly. You feed it a little bit of food. It's calm, and you're calm, and you overlook the beautiful mountainside. And you begin to let what really happened 3 years ago wash over you. It seems like a cruel joke. You and your father climbing in Banff when he fell. And you begin to cry for the first time, remembering what happened. And you sit down on the ledge, your friends slowly gathering around you, as each one of them, one by one, puts a hand on your back, giving you a hug.
That has been your second terrifying story of suspense. For our final story, we plan to make you really think about something deep in your life. Think of 3 words that describe a moment in your life that really had you scared, truly had you terrified, and send them to the YouTube comments now, please. Perhaps this could have been a moment where you were driving home and felt scared, or you were home alone for the first time. Truly, any 3 words to describe them. Fantastic, we have our words. We'll be going with our 3rd and final story on River, Uncle Marty, and Boat. Please enjoy your final story of suspense.
The day was hot and the day was long. You and your Uncle Marty had been planning a fishing trip for quite a while, and you were very excited to go with him. You were young and you hadn't known really how to fish or the excitement behind it. You had tried once before, but you found it boring, but you were told that you were more mature now. At the age of 12, you were prepared for such things. So, with much excitement, you hopped in your truck and headed towards the lake.
Throughout your entire youth, Uncle Marty has been telling stories of fishing, the big catches, the big misses, all of these things that even though when you were younger, you couldn't engage with it, you couldn't find fun in it, these stories compelled you. You found them so exciting when Uncle Marty would drop by because you knew he would have a new fishing story to tell you, or a new piece of bait he was trying out, or this big fish he'd caught. And really, you wanted to catch a big fish.
The day previous, you and your father had went to one of the fishing stores, and he had picked out one of the fanciest fishing rods that you could get. You were so excited. Even though you had never been fishing, you knew that it was something that you would love with all of your heart, especially doing it with your uncle, who had always been distant other than his fun fishing stories. He never hung around as much as some of the other family.
Even as you grabbed out your wiggling worms, you laughed like it was no big deal, even though inside every single part of you felt just a bit uncomfortable. But you thought, maybe if I laugh along, maybe if I make a few jokes, he'll see me as an equal, someone like him, and I can continue to look up to him as that bright light that had always been there throughout my youth.
You offer Uncle Marty some of these worms. And he looks at you kind of disdainfully and says, I don't use those. I just use a bare hook. It's the silver. It's the silver that reels the fish in. And there's something about the way he says silver that kind of just gives every pinprick on your body, like this unnerving feeling as you see him dangling a hook in front of you.
You recall now that you're much older how uncomfortable his talk of silver was. Worms were pretty standard, and even you who had never been fishing knew this. And this strange moment seemed to pass you by beyond a moment of uncomfortability. You get on the boat with him and you begin rowing it out. He allowed you to row. He called you a strong one, and he let you row slowly out to the middle. It didn't matter that it took longer with you doing it. Marty was smiling and laughing with you as the two of you joked about how large the fish you were going to catch were and how much you were going to eat.
As the hot summer sun baked down and hit right above your head, you could hear his booming voice almost entirely across the lake. You wondered if maybe the way he spoke would be what would scare away the fish, just with the boom and the sound of his laughter. It was almost like a roar, but it came right from inside the boat, and you almost could feel yourself moving along with the rhythm of the water.
There's a little bit of fluttering in the water, and as you look down, there's waves from a little school of minnows. They're swimming very close to the boat. They look pretty, and part of you doesn't want to catch them. They'd be too small to eat anyway. You're realizing that you admire the fish, and even though you want to win Uncle Marty over, perhaps you're having some kind of a conflict right now in your gut with catching this thing. And maybe you're destroying that beauty of the river and the beauty of the fish itself by taking it out of its home.
As you ponder these thoughts, another truck pulls up with another boat. A second group of people, a bunch of young people with beers, they grab their boat and they paddle out to the middle of the river. They seem to recognize Marty as though this is some sort of regular occasion. He tips his hat to them and they raise a glass to him. As the night goes on, you catch very little fish early in the day. But this was supposed to be a long event, so it's not a surprise to you that nothing has come yet. Eventually, the group of men in their boat head back, and it begins to get dark. And of course, you're just a kid at this point, and you remember that you're supposed to be home before it gets dark. So you tap your Uncle Marty, and you ask, Marty, aren't we supposed to be heading back about now? But Marty doesn't reply. He continues to fish.
And he gets another hook out, and you notice this one looks even more sharp. He throws his head back and kind of scoffs and sneers at you the more questions you ask about leaving. He throws it out far, that line, and you see that there's a violent tug on it, like something has bit into it. And as he starts to wrestle back and forth with that fishing rod and reel in the catch of the night, you see a gigantic catfish on the line of the hook.
Catfish frightens you at its sight, and as the tugging of the string begins to rock the boat, you stand up, startled at the catfish, and you fall over for a moment into the water. The cold, black lake begins to envelop you as you sink deeper and deeper down as your clothes begin to soak in water. You slowly fall like an anchor.
You feel afraid, you feel the cold, and you feel your clothing get heavy. And you also feel it start to grow tighter and tighter and tighter around your body. It doesn't feel like it's just being weighed down. It feels like it's pulling onto you, pulling into you.
As you try to swim up, you feel that you can't. You look down at feels like something has caught your leg. Immediately you think seaweed or your leg's caught between a rock, but as you look down, you see what seems to be a hand outstretched from the black darkness of the lake. A hand wrapping around tightly on your leg as you begin to panic and your mouth begins to fill with water. As you scream for help, suddenly something lurches you back out.
Almost like a silver hook, you see a hand reach down and yank you up as quickly as possible. It's Uncle Marty, and he's helped you back on the boat. He laughs as if nothing's wrong, except this time the laugh doesn't come across as a jovial boom. There's something almost sinister behind it.
You look down at the boat and you notice that he hasn't knocked the catfish out. It's still wriggling. And as you look closer at it, you never notice all the details on a fish. All the many gills, that tail. It's almost like it has whiskers, and those beady eyes just keep staring at you as the catfish wriggles back and forth, almost gasping. And at the same time, you know that it shouldn't be breathing air.
Your Uncle Marty leans in, crouching down, looking you closely in the eyes. Smiling, unconcerned about your fall, Uncle Marty says, "Well, now it's time to prove that you're an adult. You ready to kill it?" Something that he had said many times before, without realizing perhaps this was a little much for a child. Conflicting with whether or not you can do this, you tremble, you slowly approach it.
And all the while, Uncle Marty is berating you. He's laughing at your expense, at your hesitancy to do this. And he picks it up and puts it in your hands, this catfish, which is still struggling. And he says, either throw it in or we're throwing you in. When you take from the lake, from the river and the lake, you have to put something back. Is it going to be you or this catfish?
Your Uncle Marty hands you a knife to make it quicker. As you hesitate, slowly you put it to the head of the catfish. But you know you can't do it. You stop, you hand the catfish back with the knife, and your Uncle Marty, in a moment of anger, says, "That's what I thought." He grabs the knife and he stabs the catfish. He looks at you with disappointment. And then he pushes you into the lake. He laughs. As you tread water at the top, you can see him rowing away. What is probably him is a practical joke you know is terrifying. You begin to sink slowly. You are never the top of your class in swimming. And you're terrified.
As you get lower and lower, you again see the hand. You realize it's not solid, it's not unmoving. At first you thought, the first time you were in the water, perhaps it was just the waves, the way you could see it, but it was beckoning. The hand was beckoning towards you. You grab it, and it grabs you back with a strong, strong grip.
You let that grip pull you deeper down, and you stop struggling to get back to the top again, because it's like your body is going into a different state where it doesn't want to breathe. And you think about the catfish and how it was struggling at the top when it was out of the water, and how its natural home was back in. And now you're adapting a little bit more. As the hand keeps pulling you down, you look and something catches your eye near the bottom of the river, and you realize it's shiny, it's metallic, and it's silver.
You don't remember exactly at what point in time you passed out, but you do remember waking up, an ambulance there at the lake. You remember being wheeled away, and you remember your father being there, upset with his Uncle Marty for not taking precautions and not being able to get you out of the lake. Yet when your Uncle Marty approached you on the side, he just said, "It's our little secret, right?" And then you wheeled away into the ambulance. Your Uncle Marty never hung out much with your family after that. Whether it was guilt of what he had done or fear that he would simply be caught. Later on in your life, now, as an adult, you come back to the same lake, wanting to see what you were so afraid of as a child.
It looks the same as last time, albeit a little bit different now that we're larger. The air seems a little bit frostier, but nothing really seems out of place. As you slowly row back to the center of the lake, you remember these moments again. You begin to look down into the water to see if maybe you'll just see it again, just like last time. Maybe you'll see that hand, something reaching out for you, something there to help you carry you back into the water. And yet you just stare and there doesn't seem to be anything there.
One phrase repeats in your head, what your Uncle Marty had told you that night. When you take something from the lake needs something back. You reach into your pocket and play with the silver hook. And you wonder, recalling that when the catfish was taken out, you were put in. What was taken when you took the silver hook? You remember the hand at the bottom. You wonder whether or not it was real.
Grasping the silver hook, you throw it over the side of the boat and watch it drift deeper and deeper beneath the waves. The glimmer shines brightly for a long time, almost until it reaches the bottom. But then it's gone, it's out of sight. And you decide to jump over into the water just to see for yourself. In some ways, you remember the feeling of the water, the weight of the clothing, but you're older now. Things are different. You can swim. You dive carefully down to the bottom, and you see the hook still there. It's sitting in a palm, upturned. And after a moment, from under the water, the palm again begins to beckon and beckon and beckon.
You move toward it almost like the minnows that you saw when you had first reached the lake. A pull that you can't understand, but that you feel throughout every part of your body, that the tips of your toes are generating enough speed to get you there as quick as humanly possible, and yet as slowly as you can imagine. You stare and stare and stare at the glint of the silver. As everything seems to get dark around you, the only thing still shining is that silver hook in the upturned palm.
A school of minnows, not too different from those you saw that day so many years ago, surround you. It's almost like they form a barrier of protection around you, and you feel like you're part of them, that you're not separate from this river itself. You've added to this ecosystem. You don't know how, but these minnows, these silver hooks, what they wanted to show you is they were always there. They were always on your side, protecting you. You let the minnows depart, and as they swim away, they form beautiful waves and flutters throughout the river, and you let your body glide up, letting go, pushing gently, but letting yourself just be carried up by a beautiful release, and knowing that you had always been safe. You had always been protected by these beautiful creatures in the river. They had been watching you that very day, and that catfish had given its life for you.
As you broke the surface, you breathe in air. You feel as you bob in the water, torn between two worlds, the world you inhabit and the world you've just seen. You put an arm on the boat and just sit there treading water and contemplating and looking back towards the shoreline. A silhouette of a man, a silhouette of your Uncle Marty, just watching, understanding. You realize that he knew and he understood the whole time, but he chose to take something from the river every time. He saw what was underneath and he wanted to take away from it. And you bob, he stares, and you get into the boat, and you start to row ashore. As you get closer, you can hear his laugh as he's judging you for what you've seen. He helps you out of the boat, and you chat a little bit. It's been a long time. He's older now. There's gray in his hair, there's gray in his voice. And then he says he wants to go out one more time in the boat, and you oblige. And you start to row him out one more time. And he's got a tackle box and he's got his fishing rod, and he casts a line And as he does, you push him into the water. Someone who had taken so much and never given back.
You remembered and filled with all those moments in your past. All the times Uncle Marty had made fun of you, all the times you had felt weak. But not now, not as an adult. You held his head under as he struggled to get above. His arms grabbing yours as you kept on. He would never breach the surface until eventually, slowly, limply, his body began to sink back down.
And as he sinks, fish come in swarms. They surround the body, except this time they're not protecting it like they had when you were at the bottom. Their teeth start digging in. First little ones, and then bigger ones. The catfish, something you could have sworn was a shark, and you had only seen in a horror movie, comes. But the shark stands back, almost like respecting the little fish and letting them have their bait at the tackle first. They bite and bite, and when they get to the bone, it shines, almost like it's silver in the moonlight.
And almost as quickly as it happened, it faded, and that lake went back again to its calm, peaceful state. The sun high above, the birds tweeting, the minnows swimming, and you slowly rowed ashore because it was just a peaceful day.
Has been your final tale of suspense and horror. Your improvisers tonight were Matt, Paul, Sharon, and Susan. And remember, next time you're feeling scared or alone, but you're not alone. You're never alone. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.